You are listening to Booze and Baseball with Derek Johnson. I'm Dusty Baker. Pull up a seat and sit with us at our bar. Let's talk some ball. Derek, it's the postseason. I'm not going to say happy postseason because I don't think either one of us is particularly happy about this particular postseason, but that's why we drink. So let's just start it off. First of all, what are you drinking?
So I have this beautiful straight rye whiskey. Shout out to my parents for picking me this up. They were at a wedding in Michigan. It is called Deer Camp Straight Rye Whiskey. And so this is from Porcupine Lodge in Michigan, which is a beautiful place to visit in the summer, I hear. I've never been, but before it gets too cold. Same with like Minnesota and Wisconsin, So I got my one ice cube. I am a little bit of an ice guy. I do like those icy sips at the end. And with a rye whiskey, it's a little bit different with the rye. It's a little bit more of a kind of a spicy, like peppery type taste typically. So here is me trying this. Very good. Very good. You get the hit.
Yeah.
And so typically, so typically with the rye, you're going to get that kind of the spice, the heat, the peppery at the end. And you get a lot of that in this, but it's also very flavorful and it's not overly much. So I recommend it. I think it's very good, but it's hard to get because it's a small place in Michigan. So,
hey, you know what though? Good area to get whiskey up there. And of course, where we're at over here, it's more of the bourbon. Are you more of a bourbon or a whiskey guy?
I tend to be more of a whiskey guy. I'm actually even more of a Scotch guy than I am whiskey or bourbon. But yeah, I'd go Scotch, whiskey, bourbon. How am I rank my three? But I'm good with all three.
Okay. That's a fair ranking. I'm a bourbon guy, but whiskey's not very far behind for me. I'm not drinking either one though this evening. It is October. It is fall time, and I'm trying to embrace Kentucky beyond bourbon. So yes, believe it or not, there's more than just bourbon out here. There's actually this amazing place that I was referred to though in Indiana, which it's about a 30-minute drive north of where I'm at. It's called Huber's, and it's like a massive pumpkin patch. Honestly, like if you're ever in this region, this is a place that I highly recommend. It's Huber's, and they have a wine, and it's a spiced apple wine. Spiced apple wine from Huber's. I'll get the logo up on our screen here. It's called Sweet Apple Wine with spices added. So therefore, their Huber Winery spiced apple wine. They have all sorts of wines. They actually have a distillery there as well. But I have actually had a sip of this earlier. And I will tell you this, Derek, this is one of those wines that you can have cold, or you can do what I did with my girlfriend earlier today, and that is heat it up. And it actually tastes pretty good both ways. Like you can have, essentially it's like an apple cider wine, and it tastes delicious. I'm having it cold as we speak because my heart is cold after what I've witnessed the last couple of days in baseball. So needless to say, that's what I've decided to go with. So shout out to Huber's, Huber Winery, and let's take a sip of it cold. It's the first time having it cold.
When I was in Germany, they had some places in Frankfurt and some places in other cities that had, it's called Apfelwein, which is basically like apple wine. And so, that's good stuff.
It is really good. And I had a heated wine similar to that. I believe it was in Amsterdam, and it's delicious. So I highly recommend that time of the year for that, where you can make the excuse to heat up your wine. So with that being said, we're going to talk about the time of the year. We are recording this on October the 10th of 2023. So we're going to do our chug and look back at it stat on this day. I want to take you back to 2011 on October the 10th, and we're going to go to the ALCS because, yes, now with our new format, it pushes games further back. Of course, the World Series bleeding into November as well. Back then, we didn't have this many playoff games. So it's the ALCS. It's game 2. It's the Detroit Tigers. Derek, do you know who they were playing in the ALCS that year?
You said what, 2011? Would that have been? Gosh, okay. So 2012, they obviously won the ALCS and then ended up losing to the Giants in the World Series. 2011, would that have been that would have been after the Yankees. Oh gosh. Let's see, 2011. I'm completely blanking. It would
be on the spot right here.
Who is it?
I'll give you a hint. It's very applicable today. This particular team.
Was it the Orioles?
It was the Texas Rangers.
Oh, okay.
The Texas Rangers in 2011.
Oh, I should have known that. Rangers went to back-to-back World Series with
Yep.
10 and then 11,
Yep.
and then obviously
Yep.
11 was the David Freese year. So, yeah.
Hey, you know what? I put you on the spot and you've already had a drink. So you get off the hook on this one. So 2011, it's the Texas Rangers, and they're hosting the Detroit Tigers. Derek, you might remember this game. 51,227 in attendance for this one. It was an afternoon game, but everybody, all they really care about is what happened that evening, because it went 11 innings. It was tied at 3, and a certain hitter hit a walk-off grand slam, went 3 for 4, I believe it was. I think he went 3 for 4. Let's check. Yeah, 3 for 4 with 5 RBIs, of course, 4 of those 5 coming off the final swing of the bat. And he proved to be a key asset for the Rangers down the stretch. Do you, off the top of your head, remember this particular hitter?
Was this Mike Napoli?
Close. That was a really good guess because Napoli went off that year. And honestly, if I'm not mistaken, I think he went off in this game. He had let's see. Let's double check, because Napoli had went 1 for 4 in this game, but in that series he had a 333, 391.
Yeah, I was going to say Napoli felt like he was always clutch in the postseason, whether it was them or like the Red Sox. If it's not Napoli, I mean, you could go through what, like Nelson Cruz, Ian Kinsler, maybe.
You got it. You got it. Nelson Cruz hit a walk-off grand slam, had 5 RBIs. This is really when he started turning it on. And I mean, obviously, Nelson Cruz has had an incredible career. So I think this is when we really saw the first taste of it. So the reason why, obviously, I'm using the Rangers in this instance, congratulations to the Texas Rangers, because they have officially punched their way back into the ALCS, a series they haven't been in since 2011. So obviously kind of interesting to look back at that. It didn't feel like it was that long ago, but Derek, I mean, you review the lineup and it's pretty crazy because they have the likes of Napoli, Ian Kinsler, as you mentioned, Elvis Andrus, Josh Hamilton had a career year that year, Michael Young, Adrian Beltre. Like, that was a really good team.
Man, that's a crazy lineup. The more you went through that and kept adding names, and Michael Young, dude, all-time guy. Same with Adrian Beltre. Like all-time favorite for a lot of people. So that was really fun. And then, I mean, they had some good pitchers. They didn't have, it felt like that like ace pitcher. Although one of the years they made the World Series, that might've been the year before when they had Cliff Lee, when they made it in 2010. I don't think they had him in 2011, but you still had some like good pitchers in there. Like I always think of CJ Wilson.
Yep. CJ Wilson. You know, funny thing about this one, Derek, this may be my favorite part of this entire game. So Derek Holland was the starting pitcher for the Texas Rangers. You want to know who started for the Detroit Tigers that game?
Was it like Max Scherzer?
Max Scherzer. Nice guess. Yes, it was Max Scherzer. So it tells you that man has stood the test of time, and now he's on the other side. Now he's literally a Texas Ranger, but is he doing anything with them? No, because he's hurt. So apparently, though, he is reportedly at least tossing the ball around. I don't expect anything out of him, but congratulations to the Rangers, and we'll talk a little bit more about them here in just a second, and we're talking about those 2023 Rangers. So let's just start with that, Derek. The series ends. The Rangers sweep the Orioles in 3 games. What is your biggest takeaway?
Well, my biggest takeaway is the Rangers bats are going, and I guess that Bruce Bochy is just golden in the playoffs. I mean, obviously Bochy was the manager for the Giants in the 2016 series when they lost to the Cubs in the DS, and then the Cubs ended up winning the World Series. But outside of that, you know, Bochy was undefeated in playoff series with the Giants, and you saw a little bit of the Bochy magic in the first 2 games. Like, they didn't have anybody go more than like 4 innings in the first 2 games, but they pieced it together and the hitting went just bonkers. And then the hitting continued to keep it going. 7 runs against the Orioles in the final game, but you also got that good starting pitcher performance by Nathan Eovaldi, 7 innings, 7 strikeouts. What's crazy to me is thinking that the Rangers have gotten to this point without Jacob deGrom, without Cole Reagans, who they traded away and became like an awesome starting pitcher for the Kansas City Royals, and without like Max Scherzer sort of right now being injured. And like you said, Max Scherzer, who knows, maybe he'll be back for the ALCS at some point in one of the games. But man, just think how good this team would be if they had all those pitchers in addition to this. But yeah, man, I think they've got what it takes to win it all. Corey Seager always clutch in the postseason. Mitch Garver's hitting really well. Marcus Semien at the top of your order, was good to see him get kind of going today and score a run. Adolis Garcia, I just love watching that dude play. Even Evan Carter, who it was like, is he going to be too young for the moment? He's played well in the playoffs. The fact that you're hitting like Nathaniel Lowe and Josh Young at the bottom like 2 or 3 of your lineup is just ridiculous.
I think you pretty much nailed every point there. I'll piggyback and say my biggest ultimate takeaway outside of the obvious depth of the Rangers lineup, because that is what their identity is. They're a very deep lineup. There's not an easy out. Corey Seager is unconscious. Evan Carter looks like he's going to be a future stud. He already basically is. Josh Young is hitting the 3-4 hole on most major league rosters, right? Like, it's insane that he's that low in the lineup, and it's not at the fault of Bochy. It's a benefit, right? Like, it's a benefit that they have so much depth that they can kind of have a little bit more pop later in the lineup. Like, that's huge for them. But my biggest takeaway is I think they do have enough starting pitching. I really do. Granted, this is a shorter series still, best of 5 versus best of 7. We're going to see them tested, presumably against the Astros. It's hard to see the Twins winning 2 straight games here, and we'll get to that in a second. But presumably it's going to be a Texas matchup, and, of course, they're all too familiar with each other. As far as the depth in the rotation, I think they do have enough because Jordan Montgomery has proven to me that he can at least kill a couple innings. Doesn't mean he's going to go, pitch dominant like he did against the Rays, right? I think if he can give you a solid 5 innings, you're getting a good number. Like, you can maybe not necessarily trust the bullpen, but the bullpen is decent enough that they can hold your lead, and they have an offense that can keep you in the game, right? Because the Rangers bullpen has been kind of detrimental for them up until really the postseason. All of a sudden it's turned it on. Leclerc looks legit. Aroldis Chapman looks solid again. They've got pieces there. Spores looks good. The other takeaway, I think Nathan Eovaldi is going to be the key. You saw him go 7 innings of 1-run baseball in the final game, the clinching game against the Orioles. You saw him pitch really well against the Rays as well. I think he's got to be your number 1 guy as you go into this ALCS, and they're going to rely heavily on him to probably give them starts. I'm guessing he'll probably be their game 2 starter. I think that's how it kind of aligns in the timeline right now. He's going to have to come in clutch, and he's been clutch. They're going to really need him because he's basically their ace at this point. And if they want to get to the World Series, they're going to need to go through Nathan Eovaldi. With that being said, I mean, like, do you see that kind of the same way?
Yeah, I do. I wanted to add one quick thing on the Orioles since we hadn't really talked about them. I do think that this is an indication for the Orioles, like, you need more starting pitching. I like Kyle Bradish. I think Grayson Rodriguez is going to be really good, but, maybe too young to be starting game 2 this early on. And it feels like they needed that one other guy. They made sort of an attempt at it by getting Jack Flaherty, but that obviously kind of, flamed out and didn't totally work out. I also think there's something to be said as we get to talking about the rest of these games, except for really the Astros. There's something that's tough about coming off the bye and you don't play for 5 straight days after baseball is such a routine sport, and then you have to pick things back up. And really, outside of the Astros, we've seen these teams struggle. Is it just because these other teams are built better for this short series where, you have those guys? Is it have something to do with the bye? Is it a little bit of luck? Is it a little bit of this or that? I don't totally know. I do think the Orioles are still a really good team and will be next year. But yeah, if they could add one more like stud starting pitcher, like bring in an Aaron Nola this offseason or something, that'd be awesome for them.
Little teaser, I will have a point on what you just mentioned there when we get to the Dodgers D-back series. But as for the Orioles, I think Jackson Holiday comes through. When you get another maturity of the guys like Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, now they've seen what the playoffs are like. They've experienced it. The bright lights may have gotten to them a little bit. First time they played in front of a postseason atmosphere. This isn't the first time Corey Seager's played in front of one, right? It's not the first time Nathan Eovaldi is shoved on the big stage. Like, the Rangers were built a little better as far as performing in the postseason. And I think that the Orioles youth, it showed. And that happens, if you remember the start of the year, the Orioles, this wasn't supposed to be their year anyway. So they exceeded expectations. They're going to be just fine moving forward. This just simply wasn't their year. This was almost like a really successful trial run. And next year, when Jackson Holiday comes up, watch out, because the Orioles are going to be one of the best teams in all of baseball. I'm fully convinced. And I totally agree with you. I think the Orioles are a great fit. If the White Sox are smart and trade Dylan Cease at the height of his value, that is where I want to see Cease go. I think that would be a pretty solid fit for them. But we'll see. We'll see if the Orioles make any moves in that direction, or they could just go out and sign Blake Snell. That would also, I think, help a lot of their needs. We're going to go to the Twins and Astros series. It's still going on at the time of recording. The Astros have a 2-1 series lead. They absolutely dominated in Game 3 on the road in Minneapolis. taking down Sonny Gray as well, who has been very good this year. So as far as the fact that we don't know the end result of this series, but it seems, Derek, like this is going to be the Astros series. What are your current takeaways?
Well, my current takeaways is this has been a series of people who we thought were clutch in the postseason just continuing to step up. Christian Javier had kind of an up and down season, but he was killer in the postseason last year and in the World Series. He was part of that game where the Astros pitched a no-hitter, and obviously it wasn't just Javier. They had the bullpen pieces too. But like some of the hitters they've had, Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker, like have continued to be clutch. I mean, Yordan Alvarez is unstoppable. He looks like the best hitter in baseball right now. Home run in all 3 games, I believe, so far. He's been unbelievable. And even for the Twins, though, like Carlos Correa has come to play. He's been clutch. He has hits in every game. He's hitting like 474 in this series so far. He's been awesome. But in the end, it feels like this is a good fight by Minnesota. It feels like you are seeing a bit of the talent difference. I know the Astros only won 3 more games than the Twins did this year, but it feels like there is a lot more of that star power on the Astros than there is in the Twins. It feels like that's just kind of what's carrying it a little bit more. I think from the Houston perspective, the ability to use some of your starting pitching depth in a lot of different ways is helpful. We saw Justin Verlander look great in the first game of the series. In this most recent game, I mentioned Javier. He was really good after the up and down season, and being able to use Hunter Brown like in a bullpen role, a guy who, Hunter Brown was having a great season until the last month or 2 of the year, ended up with an ERA over 5, but we know the stuff is still there. And if you're going to play him up into a bullpen role, like good luck hitting Hunter Brown in a 1 or a 2 inning situation. So like it's just the starting pitching depth that I think has really stood out to me. That's my biggest takeaway, because this goes back to last year too when they won the World Series. You were able to pitch really good starting pitchers in shorter roles and basically magnify what they did because of how many good ones you have. And then you have the clutch hitting, you have star power at the hitting, even if it's only 3 or 4 or 5 guys where it's maybe not as deep as a year or 2 ago when you had Correa and you had some of these other players. But man, that starting pitching depth really comes in handy in these sorts of situations.
I think just from the Astros perspective, it's starting to show how much value there is to being there and doing this over and over, right? Like you have guys like Altuve that has now seen the postseason pretty much his entire career. There's a reason why on the Twins, Carlos Correa has constantly come through as well. Like these guys know how to perform on the big stage because they've been there. And as my point with the Orioles was, they hadn't been there and look, kind of caved under the pressure. And are we surprised? Not really. I think we would be very shocked if the Twins won the series, because a lot of these guys on the Twins haven't been there either, right? It's really Correa that has seen, the value of this. And also, let's not forget, the Twins' best player technically going into the season is not even playing for them. That's Byron Buxton. So I think that when you look at the Astros, they kind of limped a little bit into the playoffs, but we knew all along, I think everybody had kind of a rough idea that this team was still going to make a push, probably to the ALCS, to the World Series. I don't think anybody's shocked about any of this ride. And that's because they've got seasoned veterans that have been there. They've done it, that produce time and time again. And for the Twins, I mean, I think that Twins fans should be really excited because there is some decent youth on the team. I'm excited for the fact that it seems like they've got a formidable rotation for the first time in a long time. They're getting a lot of good pieces to step up in a big way. So, a Twins loss in this series, not necessarily detrimental, right? Like I think that it's a good stepping stone for a team that kind of also didn't play amazing in the 2023 season. Like they got fortunate that the rest of their division wasn't that good, but they're stepping up. They're playing well. They completely outplayed the Blue Jays, outclassed them in their series. So I think that this is a huge step in the right direction for the Twins fans. They got the monkey off their back of, not having a postseason win. The big thing for the Twins, I do think they need to have one more bat so that they can pair it with, a Royce Lewis and a Carlos Correa. Like they need to find one more bat. And I wonder if that one more bat's going to come from Brooks Lee, because if Brooks Lee can call internally, I think that's a call up that can make some sense. That'll help out. If it's not there, you need to maybe address what you're going to do with Byron Buxton. Is he going to be a permanent DH moving forward because his health is detrimental? That is the one detrimental thing. The rotation, I'm confident in. I know Sonny Gray didn't pitch particularly well in Game 3. Not worried about it. Overall, this is a solid team. I don't see them falling, or I don't see them beating the Houston Astros. It's not really something I see coming.
Yeah, it's weird. It almost does kind of feel like it's dead. And Sonny Gray came into Game 3. He had like a sub-2 ERA this year in day games, and they just absolutely matched. Of all people, for Jose Abreu, who had like a not good year by his standards, to hit that home run, it just feels like the Astros are. I don't know. They're just built for the postseason in whatever way.
Yeah.
Let's move to the National League.
Yeah, I agree. Let's jump to the Braves and the Phillies. You could argue that this on paper was the best series heading into the DS series. But one thing that I will say, and it's obviously 1-1 at the time of recording, even with the loss in Game 2, man, the Phillies are an impressive team. They are just an impressive team. They're built to win in the postseason. They're not a regular season built team. They've got guys that can carry them through a best of 5, best of 7. That's why we saw them win this past year and go to the World Series. And to be honest, Eric, like, I kind of think they're going to win this series too.
See, I kind of wonder if the Game 2 moment, which, by the way, that Game 2 was unbelievable, and this has been a great series so far. I'm excited to see how this finishes. I kind of wonder if that was the Phillies' chance to put them away, go up 2-0 before you're heading home, and because they let that slip through their fingers, if that's going to ignite the Braves and get them going. So I going into really before Austin Riley hit that home run, which amazing to me, got that thing out on basically like a one-handed swing. Yeah, I was, on the Phillies, that they just kind of owned the Braves. But after the way that finished, and Michael Harris making that unbelievable catch and doubling up Bryce Harper, I'm kind of in on the Braves kind of getting this thing back together. Now, I am worried, to your point, that do the Braves have enough pitching? Like Max Fried is good. Spencer Strider, one of the best pitchers in baseball. But like with the Phillies, their starting pitchers have been dudes in the postseason. Zach Wheeler was great until really the home run that he gave up. And Aaron Nola has been dynamite in the postseason. Like even Ranger Suarez, who, didn't make it through like 4 innings in the first game, but did enough to keep the Braves shut out. And then the bullpen picked it up, has been good in the playoffs. And that's the one thing I'm really impressed with. The Phillies bullpen, I really like that bullpen. Like you have, whether it's guys coming out the back, like throwing gas, like a Soto. I know Hoffman was the one who gave up the basically the game-winning home run to Austin Riley, but I still like Hoffman. Like, I don't know. I like what they have in the bullpen there. I think I agree with you. The Phillies are built for the postseason, and they're a tough matchup for a lot of teams. I kind of think that that's swayed enough momentum that I like the Braves because that lineup is just deadly for Atlanta.
Well, I think here's why I'm on the Phillies side in this. Number one, you're able to split in a brutal environment in Atlanta, right? Like you got Game 1. You know what they say, like anytime you can go on the road and split, that's a huge win for you. They go back to, in my opinion, the most hostile environment of any of the teams that are still alive in the playoffs. Like if you're telling me that I have to play anywhere and I get to pick and choose where I want to go, I probably, out of the group of 8 here, I think I would have wanted to go to Arizona. I think Arizona's got the least intimidating environment. But I think if you ask me what's the most intimidating, it's got to be Philly, right? Like that is a brutal crowd, loud, intimidating, huge, like ballpark overall, and the Phillies play well at home too. On top of that, Game 3, the Phillies have Nola going. We don't even know who the Braves are starting yet, right? Like we still don't even have an idea. So you already have one of the dudes you mentioned, and then I'm going to give you a name that I am excited for because I think he's going to step up and he's going to have some kind of role in Game 4 is my guess. And we hadn't heard much about him from the last series because of the dominance the Phillies had. But Christopher Sanchez, I think that he doesn't get the love that he deserves. He had a pretty dang good year. He stepped up in a big way. He's really efficient as a pitcher. I'm impressed by his overall efficiency. He doesn't walk a ton of guys, doesn't let a ton of guys get on base. I think that he's going to prove to be a very key factor because I think that he can give you a solid 3 to 4 innings in some sort of bulk relief. And then you go, as you mentioned, to the rest of the bullpen, and that's a pretty solid bullpen overall. I mean, Orion Kirkering. Orion's unbelievable. Dude just throws strikes. That's all he does. They just get dudes left and right, like you mentioned. And I don't know, the Phillies, like there's something about the been there, done that. The fact that they were able to beat the Braves a year ago, you wonder if that's on the Braves kind of mental side. Even with the win in game 2, I think going on the road is going to be tough. And I think if it goes 5, the Braves are going to win it. But I don't know, man. I think that the Phillies have enough to be able to pull this thing in 4. So we'll see. But my overall takeaway, I think these are, in my opinion, the 2 best teams in baseball, to be honest. I believe that the winner of this series probably goes and wins the World Series. That's ultimately my thought. I do think the Rangers are unbelievable, though, and no sleeping on them. This is not just discrediting what they've done. I think that these are the 2 most well-rounded teams, and I think the Phillies are more well-rounded. I'll be honest. I think the Braves are a good regular season team, sure, great offense, they'll put up great numbers, but postseason, I'm kind of leaning towards the Phils. With that being said, let's go to the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks. What is your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway is that in a 5-game series, you can get away with having 2 stud starting pitchers and not much else, because Brandon Pfaadt is going to be starting game 3, and Brandon Pfaadt has not been very good this year. I think Brandon Pfaadt will be a fine pitcher at some point in his MLB career. It hasn't really happened this year in his rookie year, and it didn't happen in their first postseason game when they started him. Now, I will say, Lance Lynn, who's going to be opposing him, has a career 5.3 ERA in the postseason, and his last 2 playoff starts, which were in 2018 and 2021, so it's been a while. 2 1/3, giving up 3 runs, and then 3 2/3, giving up 5 runs. So he hasn't been a great postseason pitcher. Maybe they can get away with it. But that's the point, that they were mentioning on the broadcast in game 2, and I thought it was super interesting. And it wasn't something that I really thought about till they mentioned it on the broadcast, that the plan was that they started in game 2 Zach Gallen, and that he would be available for game 5. And then, in game 1, you start your other good pitcher, and he's available in game 4. And you have to do a little bit of short rest normally, but because of the spacing with the division round, especially how this one worked out with the National League this year, it almost worked out perfectly to the Diamondbacks, because they are very much a team where they have 2 stud starting pitchers, and then they don't have a lot else, and they don't have a super deep bullpen overall. But with Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen, that's enough for you to do it. And I don't know what it says that Merrill Kelly had never beaten the Dodgers before, and he finally did. I don't know what to do with that, but I think there's something else to be said about athleticism in baseball nowadays. I think with the bigger bases and the new stealing rules, athleticism is so much more important. We saw that with the Reds. That's why the Reds were a contender, because they were athletic, they were stealing bases. I think that's the reason why the Giants fell off. They were one of the worst teams in the MLB in stealing bases. If you're an athletic team, you're going to inherently be good at defense, because you should have good range all over the field. And inherently, you're going to steal a lot of bases. And when that's an opportunity now to get a lot more of those, it's a way to make things up. Now, obviously, that's not the be-all, end-all in this series. The pitching's been great, and they scored 11 runs in the first game, and they're just scoring 1 billion runs in the first inning, and that's going to win you a lot of games. But I think there is something to be said about athletic teams and how that can be super helpful at this time of year, because stealing that extra 1 base or nabbing that 1 extra out, that can be the difference in a playoff game or in a playoff series.
Yeah, I'll take a little different angle on this. First of all, you had mentioned the break, the little gap that you get if you get a bye. Personally, I think you got to overcome that. You regardless of the gap, it's still baseball. It's still a game that you're practicing every day. You've seen 1 billion pitches, right? Yeah, you may be a little cold going into game 1, but you're also getting your starters to be rested, right? You get everybody to take a break after a long 162. There's something to be said about you get a week off. You get a chance to recoup, regather yourself while other teams are burning arms. You're not. And I think it's become an excuse. I really do, for these buys, these teams with buys. The Astros took care of business game 2 and game 3, right? That's a team that knows how to win. The Dodgers, and I'll start with the Diamondbacks first, because I want to make sure that I cover them. They are super athletic. Corbin Carroll, one of the best players in baseball. He is intimidating. He's not a big dude. Doesn't matter. He's kind of Jose Altuve style, where it's, hit hard, liners, hits bombs, steals bases, just plays the game the right way. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., dude's got some pop. I think he's one of the most underrated players in all baseball. Gabriel Moreno, the dude has turned it really significantly on here, especially late. And yeah, the pitching has been incredible from Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen. So tip my cap to the Diamondbacks. They've been playing, I don't think out of their minds. I think they've been playing exactly how the Diamondbacks play, right? Like they play fast. They're kind of gritty. They're a little, they got a chip on their shoulder. They play high energy, and they're an interesting brand of baseball to watch. Now on the flip end, what I have really taken away from with this series is that it does not matter how many wins you get in the regular season. It just does not matter. I don't care if you win 180 or 160 games. Like you could win 162 games in the regular season. Who cares? Give them your stupid regular season trophy. It doesn't matter. Like if you get in the playoffs, that's all that matters, right? Like that is all that matters. And the Dodgers, it's like once the calendar turns to October, outside of 2020, which wasn't even a full season, it's like they just become a bunch of chokers. Like Mookie Betts, he's 3 for 36 since the NLCS in 2021. Freddie Freeman hasn't hit a ball solid in his 2 games against the Diamondbacks pitching that he dominated during the regular season. James Outman looks like the rookie he was a year ago in his first at-bat. Like it's a totally different team for the Dodger Blue when the month turns from September to October. And I firmly believe that there are certain players that play under the lights and that succeed on the big stage. And there are some players that are good regular season players. They show up in the regular season, and the moment that a clutch moment matters, they don't show up. And I feel like it starts with your coaching. I think Dave Roberts has been bad this postseason. Like, I don't think he's poorly managed by any means. I think the team itself has just been bad. But you got to light a fire under these guys. You got to be able to make it so losing isn't an option. And Dave Roberts, the problem with him is it's almost like it's, okay, boys, let's get him next time. Let's get him next day. Instead of, guys, like, what did we do wrong? Like, assess the situation, figure it out, have a fire under yourselves. Like, they're waving. David Peralta gets a double down 9-0, and he does a little dance at second base as if nothing's wrong. Like, it's mind-boggling. Like, this team hasn't made it to the World Series in the last, in technically the last 5 years. Those are 4 full seasons they haven't made it to the World Series. One exception was the COVID year. That is unacceptable for a team that's won 100 games this year, won 111 a year ago. All they did was win 1 game against the Padres team. And then they won 106 games. 2019 when they lost the Nationals. 2021 was the 1 year that they made it to the NLCS, and then they bowed down to the Braves. So it's just, and that wasn't, by the way, that was not a good Braves team, right? Like that, they were a hot Braves team, but that was like the worst Braves team technically in the regular season that they had in a long time. It's just they got hot, right? And so that's the storyline here. As a Dodgers fan, it's absolutely infuriating, and I just, you can't blame this on Dave Roberts. Clayton Kershaw, I think his career is coming to a close. I hate to say it. I think it is. It's got to be towards the end, if not the end here. Like, we may have seen the final start for Kershaw. Build your rotation. Build your rotation. Get guys that can, get you through not only the 162, but give you depth in the postseason. Because the Dodgers, they didn't account for that. They instead love reclamation projects. They love these guys like Jason Hayward. Oh, we're going to squeeze 15 home runs out of them in the regular season, and they're going to do really great. And maybe they do, but then the postseason comes. They're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. I'm Jason Hayward. I don't hit the ball when I'm supposed to in clutch moments. Like, it is infuriating. It's just shocking. It's disappointing. I don't see how the Dodgers get out of this series alive. So, yeah, that's my solid take on them. It is just another disappointing year. Thank you, Louisville Cardinals, for giving something for me to root for, because it's just it's a mess. So I just spoke for a long time. What are your final thoughts on any of these 4 playoff series?
No, I hope that was cathartic for you. I just wanted to shout out a couple of unsung heroes so far. Kevin Ginkel's been really good out of the bullpen for Arizona. This isn't an unsung hero, but Zach Wheeler has been fantastic for the Phillies so far. I've really liked what Pablo Lopez has done. And then when you're looking at some of the hitters that I wanted to kind of shout out here, Tommy Pham, 7 hits, man. What a mid-season acquisition that was for the Diamondbacks. He's hitting 389 so far in the postseason. You mentioned Gabriel Moreno, Leody Taveras playing well, Bryson Stott, who he had a really good year, but I mean the Grand Slam, he need 357 in the postseason. The postseason always a time to make new heroes and for some fun unsung heroes to emerge, and wanted to shout those ones out.
Yeah. How about Mitch Garver, the way that he played too in his series with Texas, man? I mean, you just get these guys that all of a sudden they got the clutch gene. And Corey Seager, I'll be honest, man, if the Texas Rangers win the World Series, it's going to be because that guy is in the lineup. That guy is just special. It's fun to watch him play. And I think he's one of the most underrated players in baseball. I know he makes a ton of money, right? Like, it's not like he's looked at as, oh, he slips under the radar. It's not necessarily that. I think when you think about the MLB, you get the thoughts of Aaron Judge and you get Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, and nobody really sits there and talks about Corey Seager, right? But this dude is one of the most pure hitters in all baseball. Guy has had an MVP type season, and he's helping lead a Rangers team that is already good, and he's just a staple in the middle of that lineup. So I got to give a massive shout out to Seager because he just continuously has got to be one of the most consistent players in all baseball. So before we go, Derek, we also are a big fantasy baseball show, as everybody knows. So we are going to quickly review, since a lot of you are probably considering in your dynasty leagues, what does that first round look like? Or maybe it's not your dynasty. Maybe it's just your regular season league and you're already excited about that. What does the first round of rankings for the top 12 players look like? And do we want to do it as keeper or do we want to do it as 1 year, Derek?
Well, this is just 1 year from Yahoo that I wanted to go over these rankings. And I kind of had some questions with this, whether, what pick would you kind of want here, or maybe what player are you buying into? What player do you maybe think has a chance of kind of falling out the rankings? Because here's the Yahoo rankings. It's 1, Ronald Acuna. 2 is Julio Rodriguez. 3, Mookie Betts. 4, Fernando Tatis Jr. 5, Bobby Witt Jr. 6, Corbin Carroll. 7, Kyle Tucker. 8, Freddie Freeman. 9, Shohei Ohtani, obviously the utility player. 10, Aaron Judge. 11, Matt Olson. 12 is Trey Turner. And then they gave an honorable mention, so I guess 13 for Spencer Strider. Now, this is for a 1 year league. Is there anybody on that list that you're like, I feel like they're too low? Or is there anybody on that list that you're like, I could see them falling out of being a first round value?
Yeah, I think obviously statistically, most standard leagues, they'll have home runs, RBIs, runs scored, average, and steals, right? So keeping those in mind, I think Corbin Carroll and Bobby Witt Jr. at 5 and 6. I mean, I'd be happy with both of them at the 3 spot. I wouldn't be upset. I think I would take both of them, to be honest, over Mookie and Fernando Tatis Jr. I really believe that those two offer more potential value, I guess, as the ceiling. I think they have higher ceilings there. You kind of know what you're getting with Mookie. He's a safer pick. Clearly, he's a regular season warrior, and we won't talk about the postseason. But I think those two really stick out to me. I also think that maybe Matt Olson's a little too low. It's hard because this is such a good group of players, but Matt Olson hits bombs, man. That guy just hits 50+ bombs easily. And if you want a guy that's going to give you guaranteed pop, I mean, that is an easy pick to take. I would say maybe at 8 or 9, I would actually consider it. Between him and Freddie Freeman, it's a toss-up. Shohei Ohtani with the injury, I'm very concerned. I got to be honest. I'm getting back from surgery and swinging a bat. Bryce Harper, you saw his numbers kind of drop off, and he's finally picking it up now, but it takes time, right? So I don't know if I'm buying Shohei at that price. I really like Carroll. I really like Bobby Witt Jr. That's kind of where I'd see them at the high. And maybe Shohei Ohtani is a little too high for me just based off of the surgery. What about you?
I agree because of the injury stuff. I'll be interested in Freddie Freeman. He's such a pure hitter that it wouldn't surprise me. But you keep getting older, eventually there is going to be a fall off. Will it be next year? Maybe not. I actually am interested by Matt Olson because I don't know why. I have no idea the rhyme or reason to this. He has alternated high and low to him, OPS seasons or average seasons. So you go to his rookie year, he has a 464 OPS. Mm-hmm. Then you go to year 2 with Oakland, he has over 1,000 OPS. Then you go the next year, he goes down to a 788 OPS. Next year, it's up to an 896. Next year, it's down to a 734. Next year, it's up to a 911. Next year, it's down to 802. Next year, which is this year, it's up to a 993. I don't know why. He has like alternated good and like still good, but not great seasons, which he's having right now. So maybe that alternates again. I don't really have the rhyme or reason, but yeah, that would be the one thing that I would kind of keep in mind there. Is there a pick that you would be wanting in your fantasy draft, and where would you be comfortable taking a pitcher?
Yeah, I would say just based off of like 1-year leagues.
Like what pick slot? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in this group, I really like the idea that you can get more value probably in the back end just because so many of these guys are so similar. If I can get Corbin Carroll at 6 or Bobby Witt Jr. at 5, I mean, that's where I'd want my pick to be because I think I can easily build off that. I'm happy with getting Aaron Judge at 10, to be honest. And if Matt Olson's really there at 11, and I don't believe he would be, but if he is, like, I will take him at that pick, you know? So I'd be very happy there because then I would probably take a pitcher, maybe not on the back end. I don't know if I'm buying as much the idea of getting a pitcher early like I used to. I used to believe that if you got a top heavy pitcher in like round 2, you're really setting yourself up well. I think there's more good pitchers now out there that like there's kind of a depth, a pool. Like I would want a Logan Webb, let's say, more in the 100s, right? Like that's kind of what I'd rather get than getting a Corbin Burns in the second round. Like Logan Webb and Corbin Burns, while they're obviously Corbin Burns is going to be picked way higher, I don't think, week to week, you're getting that big of a disparity in that sense to the point where it's so significant versus getting a Matt Olson season of 50 home runs and, trading that for a guy that's going to maybe go like 6 innings and get me 3 runs. Like I can kind of stream that. So I'd rather go with the hitter. I think that maybe 4th round is when I'd take a pitcher. Like I'd rather go hitting early. And then in a 1-year league, go for the young rookies, the guys like Dylan Cruz, I think is going to be a good pickup. Or obviously you got the kid for Texas Rangers if he could get the opportunity, and Wyatt Langford. I think that he could be special. You get the Japanese kids that are coming over. So it's just like you can find some value in dudes that may not be pre-ranked highly, but are probably going to end the year ranked higher and significantly higher. Just based off the fact that Yahoo kind of does this. Like Yahoo likes to take the top prospect and always put them in the like 98 to 105 range. That's what they love to do. And I will always take that player, the 75th pick. That's just the money spot. So that's what I do. And I did it with Bobby Witt Jr. a couple of years ago. It worked to perfection. I just drafted a horrible roster outside of it. So that's my own bad doing that. But like, that's kind of my strategy. Like go and wait for, good pitching maybe in the middle, and then get the young studs that are coming up, before they're supposed to be picked.
All right. Well, yeah, I agree. I think I'd want to be in that top 7 because even if you give me Kyle Tucker at 7, I'd be happy with that. And then where I'd be comfortable taking a pitcher, yeah, I wouldn't want to take him early second. I'd be fine. I don't know, man. Even late second, like I wouldn't. I don't unless it's Spencer Strider. I'd be fine with Spencer Strider in the second round at some point. But like I don't want to take Corbin Burns or Garrett Cole in even the second round. I'd be comfortable with either of those guys in like the third, but it'd be dependent on what I did in the first 2 rounds and if I feel good enough with my hitting. But yeah,
I think that's a fair assessment. But you know what? It's coming up quick. Derek and I are going to New Orleans in a couple months, and that's when we'll, the real deal will happen with our league. Derek, as we approach the ALCS and NLCS, any final thoughts before we close out this podcast?
No, just looking forward to how things finish off. Do you want to give a one final World Series pick?
Yeah, we might as well because we're going to be back in 2 weeks, and by that point, we're going to find ourselves in the World Series. So I think it's going to be the Phillies and the Texas Rangers. That would be my honest guess because I think the Phillies are the best team as far as I think they're going to outlast the Braves. I think if the Phillies face off against either the Diamondbacks or the Dodgers, which it's going to be the Diamondbacks, but if it's not, I think the Phillies are better than the Dodgers. And I think the Phillies are better than the Rangers by just a tad bit. So I'll say the Phillies in 6 games.
All right, I'm going to take the Braves, and I'm going to take them over the Astros with their playoff experience repeat of the World Series from a couple years ago. And I'm going to take the Braves over the Astros in 5 games.
in 5 games. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to find out. And obviously, our next podcast, we'll do a little season review as well. We got some stocks we got to go over. We'll also give you more of our fantasy advice. But that will do it for this particular podcast as we find ourselves in the heart of the postseason. On behalf of Derek Johnson, I'm Dusty Baker. Thanks again for pulling up a bar stool and hanging with us. Let's grab a drink again in 2 weeks. Until then, we will talk to you. The World Series is nearing. Cheers to